for being here. We just completed a meeting of the Unified Command Group, and I have earlier this morning personally spoken with just about every parish president along coastal Louisiana and a few of the sheriffs as well, and I've been in close contact with Lieutenant Governor Nungesser, who is down in Plaquemines Parish. Tony Robinson from FEMA, who is the administrator of Region 6, continues to be with us, and he's here today, and I want to thank him for that. And Congressman Graves was able to join us for the UCG meeting, and he's here with us, and I thank him as well. As you all know, Barry is now a hurricane. The guessing game is over. It made landfall as a hurricane with 75-mile-per-hour winds. It is easing onshore slowly at 6 miles per hour. That's one of the challenges with this storm. We would like for it to pick up pace a little bit, and so that it would move through the area a little quicker. It is expected to move up the center of the state, exit somewhere on the Louisiana Arkansas border, and again, the quicker it could do that, the better. The track did shift slightly to the west. However, it is well within the cone that we were told to expect from the National Weather Service, and so there were no real surprises there. Rainfall remains the primary hazard. We are still looking at 10 to 15 inches of rain with the possibility of higher isolated amounts. As we all know, however, it doesn't take much saturation of the ground so that even slighter winds can have a devastating impact with respect to trees falling onto houses and highways and so forth, as well as utility poles. And so power outages will be significant, and in fact are already significant in some areas of the state. And while rainfall remains the #1 threat, we're also experiencing storm surge flooding that will continue throughout the day. Tropical storm force winds will also likely impact much of the southern part of the state. In fact, if you look at it, they're going to extend from Cameron Parish in the west over to Lake Pontchartrain in the east, and now well north of Alexandria as the storm continues to move north. Anytime you have a storm like this, there is a possibility of tornadoes, and so we ask people to be very careful with that. We are keeping a close eye on the rivers across South Louisiana, all the way from the Mermentau in the west to the Tangipahoa River in the east, and actually even further than that. But with particular eyes upon the Comeet and Amite rivers here in the capital region, based upon regional experience that we had in 2016, we do expect the Comeet to crest very close to, if not slightly higher than, the crest in August of 2016. That is obviously not good news here. We expect the Amite to crest right around the crest at the 1983 flood levels. Now, that's a little better than in 2016, but still a very serious flood threat. Some good news is that the gauge at the Carrollton gauge, I should say, of the Mississippi River in New Orleans is now expected to crest at 17.1 feet. As you know, as of yesterday, we were expecting that crest to be 19 feet. Even at 19 feet, we didn't anticipate river overtopping the levees anywhere. We can say now that the rivers will certainly not overtop the levee anywhere on the Mississippi. The U.S. Coast Guard did rescue 11 people from their flooded homes in Ile de Jean Charles this morning in the lower portion of Terrebonne Parish. That area is outside the hurricane protection system of Terrebonne and was under a voluntary evacuation order. And I want to pause to thank the Coast Guard for doing that. Incredibly important that those services were available, and they have the expertise and the equipment to be able to make those rescues even by air during the period of the storm when most other air assets are not able to fly. And so that's another federal resource that has been brought to bear here in the state of Louisiana to protect life, and that's critically important. I do want to clear up a little misinformation that's been going around. The overtopping that has occurred in Plaquemines Parish is not the Mississippi River levee. It is a back levee in the vicinity of Myrtle Grove, and it points further south. At this point, Highway 23 in Plaquemines Parish has not been overtopped. It has not been closed, but that is certainly possible going forward. And this validates, I believe, the decision that President Kirk Lepine made to have a mandatory evacuation in the lower portion of Plaquemines Parish. We actually anticipated that the back levee would be overtopped, and so we are not surprised by what has happened. But what everyone should understand, no Mississippi River levee has been overtopped, and not a single levee in the state of Louisiana as of right now has failed or breached. Finally, I want to share with everyone that if you are in need of a shelter, you can text LA Shelter to 898-211, or you can call 211 to find a list of shelters that are open in your area. Again, text LA Shelter, that's all one word, LA Shelter, to 898-211 or call 211. I also want to caution everybody, this is just the beginning. I ask everyone to stay vigilant and be safe. This has always been projected to be a rain flood event, and it will be. The vast majority of the rain that's falling right now is falling in the Gulf. That will soon change as the storm continues to move north. We have planned, we have prepared, we have stationed folks. We've activated 3,000 members of the National Guard. We have pre-positioned assets, including buses and pumps. Shelters are open, and more are opening around the state. We need you to continue to stay in touch with the news sources. Heed the advice of local elected officials. Do not attempt to go sightseeing. That is very dangerous for you, but the real problem with that is you make it much more likely if you venture out too soon, and when it's not necessary for you to do so, our emergency response people are going to have to be trying to rescue those sightseers and not be able to focus solely on those individuals who need rescuing because of the flood. And so be patient. If you are driving and you don't know for an absolute fact that standing water is safe to proceed through, don't do it. Turn around and go back. That is the source of most fatalities in floods, at least here in Louisiana over the last several years. The other problem with that is often there is a current, and it's imperceptible in many cases, and it doesn't take much current to wash a car or a truck off the road or highway into a ditch or a stream, and individuals drown. You can find real-time information on all roadways in the state by visiting 511la.org. It will indicate whether the road is under construction, whether there is water over the road, whether the road has been closed. Be patient as it relates to cleanup activities too. Don't get out before it is safe to do so. And when you get out to clean up, understand that any wire on the ground should be presumed to be energized. Do not handle or expose yourself to the danger of any electricity lines. So it's going to be a long several days for our state. I know the people of Louisiana are strong and resilient, and I can assure you we are going to get through this, but there are going to be some significant challenges. The next UCG meeting is scheduled for 4 p.m. tomorrow. However, we may, and I suspect we likely will have another press availability before that UCG meeting is over. I expect there may be another one tonight with information that we continue to learn, both as it relates to the storm and to the damage that we're seeing across the state of Louisiana. And I would invite everyone to continue to put themselves and their families in a better position to withstand the remaining portions of this storm as it plays out over the next few days, and to continue to join their prayers to mine for our state. Now, at this time, I'm going to be followed with more specific information from the following individuals and in this order. CPRA Chairman Chip Klein will be followed by Secretary Sean Wilson of DOTD. Secretary Marquita Walters of DCFS will next brief on the status of shelters. She'll be followed by Secretary Gee of the Department of Health. General Curtis of the National Guard will speak after Secretary Gee, and then Congressman Garrett Graves will speak after General Curtis. The other individuals who are here do not anticipate speaking. However, we will all be available to answer questions that you may have once the comments are delivered and Congressman Graves concludes his remarks. So at this point, if you'll come on up, Chip.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Governor. At this time, all hurricane protection systems and hurricane risk reduction systems around South Louisiana are currently operating as they need to be. All floodgates around the greater New Orleans area with the Hurricane Storm Damage and Risk Reduction System, floodgates have now been closed, as well as the floodgates around the La Rosa Golden Meadows system, as well as the Morganza the Gulf Hurricane Protection System. I want to echo what the Governor said earlier. There has not been a single levee in coastal Louisiana or across South Louisiana that has failed or has been breached. We are addressing the overtopping of some levees in two areas. As the Governor mentioned, in Plaquemines Parish, we fully anticipated the overtopping of that levee, and as a result, we had pre-positioned some assets there, some sandbag operations, and some temporary pumps to dewater that area in the event that that levee was overtopped. There is a permanent pump station that is operating now along a specific canal behind that back levee to help bring those water levels down. Additionally, in Terrebonne Parish, in the Montague area, there is a segment of levee in the southern portion of the Morganza to the Gulf that has been overtopped. No water has impacted residential areas at this time, so there's no area of water in people's homes. And so we are currently coordinating with Terrebonne Parish officials to do some flood fighting efforts there. And again, I will echo this, that no Mississippi River levees in Plaquemines Parish have been overtopped at this time.
Thank you, Chip.
Thank you, Governor. For the public to know, we have begun to see road closures. Right now, we're at about 16 road closures along the southern part of the state that's been primarily impacted by this weather event. The department has taken precautionary measures and have closed about 24 movable bridges. We do that for a number of reasons. One has to do with wind and, of course, the amount of water that we have, and it allows us to protect the structure and then repopulate the community by moving it back into its functional position after the event. Both of these situations are very dynamic in terms of what happens through the storm. The longer this event takes place, the more dynamic it becomes in terms of road closures and bridge closures. And I would call your attention to 511la.org because that's the most up-to-date real-time data that you can get regarding those closures. And I say that because as we see this system move north through the state of Louisiana, we anticipate providing some detours and some closures to protect our resources and to better make to make our services more efficient for you all, to make sure we're in the right spots along the way. Federal Motor Carrier Safety, for those who are not in Louisiana, issued yesterday a regional declaration for folks who are going to be providing support services post-storm. And so if you're in the southeastern portion, we've been talking to the trucking community to make sure that they're aware if they're doing emergency response type work. There are some exceptions that have been declared by Federal Motor Carrier Safety. And finally, regarding the assets that we have, we're at 177 coaches here in the state of Louisiana, as well as 31 paratransit services, and we're adding an additional 27 within the next couple of hours, and we have 171 school buses. We will move those around as the event progresses, and so we have a vehicle staging area in Acadiana. I was there last night visiting. It's moving very well, very efficient, and the drivers are ready to evacuate and or assist in search and rescue by moving people out of harm's way. We have an additional facility at Lamar-Dixon, and we're moving additional assets into the Baton Rouge region, and of course we still are maintaining our position down at the Baby Cakes Field in New Orleans. So rest assured that we have the equipment to move you in and out. And then finally, as we get past this event, we are prepared for debris. We have folks already on the ground removing trees and limbs in places where it's still safe because of wind and it's disrupting traffic. So finally, remember, we will expect some additional detours, whether it be water, flooding, road closures, sinkholes, whatever you might think. We're going to be preparing that, and the best place to get it is going to be 511la.org.
Thank you.
I want to begin by thanking the parishes across the state that have worked with us to open shelters and take care of their local residents. We have 28 shelters open across the state right now. The bed count last night was 315 people. We do this count at midnight so that we get a true count of who is in the shelter. Shelter populations fluctuate during the days, and so you may hear different numbers of, oh, there were 400 people here or whatever. We brief you on the number that slept in a cot in a shelter anywhere in the state, and that number was 315 last night. We are staging right now in Baton Rouge and Lafayette to take any overflow of that and, of course, to be prepared for search and rescue efforts that we know are coming. If you are looking for a shelter, we have this neat new nifty flyer that you have, and for those of you with print media, as the governor said, you text LA Shelter, one word, to the number 898-211, 898-211. And that will give you a listing of all the shelters that are open and give you information about those. You can also call 211 if you want more information. So we will continue to brief you with numbers of people that spend the night in shelters, but if you're looking for shelter information, that 211 text or call is your best route.
The Department of Health is actively taking care of 3 facilities that have evacuated. One has evacuated to our medical shelter, a special needs shelter in Alexandria. There's additional beds and capacity available there. If you have a medical special need, do call 211 so you can make sure that you go to the appropriate place. You may have local resources available to you that you may not be aware of. In New Orleans, Rosenwald Center is open and available and staffed. After the event, you will need to test your wells if you've had some flooding in your area, and we will have kits available. Please call 211 to find out where you can get those kits. Look on our website, Louisiana Department of Health. Their Office of Public Health has notifications about mold conditions and recommendations about impacts to your health from possible flooding. So do keep in mind that there will be conditions that might lead to more mosquitoes, more mold, and take care of yourself in that case. Certainly do call 211. If you want to be a volunteer, we do have the Lava Network, and we have a network of volunteers who have been set up, and it's always great when people do want to go volunteer their time and help, but please make sure that you call 211 first and make sure that that's needed. And if you're not already in Lava, probably it's not the right time to start volunteering. We've got it covered. We have plenty of help and resources and assets available. We will have assets here in Baton Rouge if needed, and should be available this evening upon demand. So wishing everyone a healthy and stay well and dry. Thanks.
Yeah, as the governor mentioned, we still have 3,000 Louisiana Guardsmen on duty. Predominantly, they're still positioned in South Louisiana, so the greater New Orleans area, I-12 across I-10 and south. We have some ongoing missions, but we're mostly getting focused in the aftermath to get ready to do search and rescue really across South Louisiana and as it's needed, do security missions. One of the things we focused on the last couple of days with FEMA is making sure we had commodities moved in so that we were able to provide food and water as needed to our citizens in the aftermath of this storm. We'll tell you we're starting to look at Central and North Louisiana as the storm moves north to try to make sure that we're set in those areas to do search and rescue, security, commodities distribution, and whatever other requests we have. With that, Governor, thank you.
Thank you. And Congressman Graves was called away, and so he is not here to brief. And so with that, we're going to open the conference up for questions. Yes, sir.
Is there anything yet that has surprised you about the storm or your team? Where it is, rainfall, winds, anything?
No, we're not surprised, but I will tell you that this storm has our attention. and it should have the attention of everybody across the state of Louisiana. I think it's probably helpful in at least as it relates to making sure that folks are cognizant of the dangers and the threats that we had severe flooding here in 2016. In a certain smaller portion of East Baton Rouge, we had a significant flood on June 6th. We were able to compare the expected crest of the Comeet and Amite, for example, to what has happened recently here, and I think that gives people some idea of what they can expect. So I don't know that we've been surprised by anything up to now, but it is early. Most of the rain continues to fall in the Gulf, and so I have every reason to believe, as the way these things usually unfold, before it's all over, Mother Nature will throw a few curveballs at us, but it really hasn't happened yet. Yes, sir.
You mentioned 11 people in Terrebonne
Yeah.
being rescued. Is there any other search and rescue going on now?
Not that I've been briefed on, and look, this is fluid. Something could have happened since the UCG meeting was over, but the only search and rescues that I'm familiar with have been in Lower Terrebonne Parish. They were conducted by the Coast Guard and by air. And of course, we do have other means of conducting search and rescue, swift boats, high water vehicles, and those sorts of things. Anybody else aware of any additional? So we haven't had any yet, but we do anticipate search and rescue being necessary from the upland flooding that will result when the rain falls, the rivers swell, and so forth. So that's really what the focus is on by the National Guard, the state police, wildlife and fisheries, the fire marshal's office. We actually have a team that has moved into the Livingston Parish area. It's a Texas task force specifically around search and rescue as well. Yes.
Governor, can you, the Comeet River, you said it's expected to reach near or slightly
Yeah.
higher than.
Yeah, and that's measured by the depth at your road. Yeah.
Can you talk about the concerns there and what people should expect if that's to happen?
Well, first of all, it's going to play out over a period of time. And so nobody should look out their door and say, well, the water isn't rising now, so I think they're overestimating it. This is going to happen not just as rain falls in the immediate vicinity over the next number of hours, but as rain falls north as well, because all of that rain is going to flow south. And so obviously we think the prudent thing to do is first of all, give this information to individual residents of the area, but also to local elected officials. It will inform their decisions about additional evacuations, be they mandatory or voluntary. Also, the opening of shelters, how many shelters that we anticipate need to be opening, and so forth. But the other thing that gives us a lot of cause for concern is the levels of rainfall that we're talking about in those rivers are also going to fall elsewhere in Louisiana too, in rivers that don't have quite that experience recently, and so those residents and business owners in the close vicinity to those rivers haven't experienced it like happened here in 2016. So this is a very serious storm, and I guess that's the real message around the Comeet levels that we expect to see before this is all over. And again, this is going to play out over the next 36 hours or so. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned 2016 floods and the Comeet River levels. I know that there's differing rain levels for this storm, but it's slow moving and it's sitting on top of us. A lot of people that we talk to have a lot of anxiety
Yeah.
considering the slow moving, heavy rainstorm through 2016. Any message to them? Do y'all have any particular game plan for those
Yeah.
particular areas where they flooded?
Well, look, some level of anxiety may be helpful if it spurs people to take this seriously and to safeguard lives and property as best that they possibly can. We don't want people to be so anxious that they don't do anything. And so we're just encouraging folks to do what you're being told to do by local elected officials, to take very seriously the forecasted crests of the Comeet, the Amite, other rivers in the area. Like I said, we've got information now on rivers all across the North Shore and even west of the Mississippi River too. The Mississippi River, oddly enough, is the one that's levied, and it's the one that doesn't pose a threat. Every other river in South Louisiana right now, basically, with the possible exception of the Calcasieu River and the Sabine River, they pose a threat to flooding and overtopping. And if we get the levels of rain that we're talking about, you don't need to live along a river in order to flood. It can happen in downtown Baton Rouge the way it did on June 6th. And so we're trying to make sure that everyone is paying attention and taking necessary precautions. No one should be so anxious and so stressed that they fail to take advantage of the opportunity they have over the next number of hours to put themselves in a better position to withstand what Mother Nature is going to throw at us. Any other questions? Well, I want to thank you, and again, we anticipate having another press availability later today. We will let you know as soon as possible when we schedule that. We will have a UCG meeting at 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, and that one surely will be followed by another press conference here. Thank you all very much, and everyone be safe and take extra precautions on this one. It's serious. Thank you. Bye-bye.